Judges ready? Timer? Alright. I have always disliked men, as far back as I can remember, and antipathy to men and dogs was one of my strongest characteristics. I was none of that. The more I saw men, the more I liked cats. So when Reverend Allen asked me if I could consent to take a class at Sunday school, I said no. If he had sent his wife the first time, as he had the second, it would have been wiser. I shall take the boys. Nuisances they are bound to become, but if taken in hand young enough, they might not grow up to be such nuisances as they otherwise would. They are a very mild set of boys. None of boys who weren't. I think perhaps you like the carols best. It is not what I like best that must be considered, Mrs. Allen. I feel that I shall be best for them. Oh, I have no doubt that's McPherson. She thought it would be a dismal failure. But I was not. I'm not often a dismal failure when I make up my mind to do a thing. I am noted for that. The Quarantine at Alexander Abraham's, from Chronicles of Avonlea by L.M. Montgomery, with slight adaptations made by Kate Long. Jimmy Spencer had been absent from Sunday school for the past 2 weeks. I found that he'd been hired out to Mr. Alexander Abraham Bennett, the cowboy woman-hater, so I harnessed my pony to the buggy and drove down. As usual, I took Wilma to office, my favorite cat, with me for company. I knew the house by its neglected appearance. Plainly, there was no woman about that place. Still, what could you expect? I tucked Wilma to office under my arm and marched the path. Just as I was halfway up, a dog swooped around the corner. He didn't even bark, just came silently, speeding on. I never stopped to argue matters with the dog. I know when discretion is the better part of valor. I ran, not to the door, because the dog was between me and it, but to a tree, thrusting me opposite above my head. I scrambled up. The dog was sitting on his haunches below, watching us. He barked his teeth and growled as he caught my eye. You look like a woman-hater's dog. The beast took it for a compliment. Shall I scream, Wilma, in office? No, I shall not scream. No one known to hear me, except Alexander Abraham. I have painful doubts about his tender mercies. Just above my head was an open window with a tolerably stout branch extending across it. I got in by the window easily enough. I found myself in a room the like of which, for disorder and dust and general awfulness, I had never seen in all my life. The man was standing by the door. I would have known for Alexander Abraham anywhere. His hair looked as if it had never been combed, and his whiskers were wild in the extreme. Where's Jimmy Spencer? How in tarnation did he ever let you in? He didn't let me in. He chased me all over the lawn, and I only saved myself by scrambling up a tree. Where's Jimmy? Trust a woman for getting into a man's house if she's made her mind to. Oh, it wasn't particular about getting into your house, Mr. Bennett. It was getting at least the worst fate before me. Where's Jimmy? He left last week. Hired out with the man over at Newbridge. In that case, I shall go. I pushed past Alexander Abraham and came face to face with Dr. Blair. You promised me you would not let anyone into the house. I didn't let her in. She climbed in an upstairs window despite the presence of a policeman and a dog. If my presence is so extremely inconvenient, you may soon be relieved of it, for I'm going at once. I am very sorry, Pete said, but this house is under quarantine for smallpox. Mr. Bennett was in town last night, but he took dinner at a boarding house where one of the maids developed unmistakable symptoms of smallpox. I don't think there's much likelihood of Mr. Bennett taking it, but until we are sure, he must remain here. Very well, Doctor. My pony's headed the fence. Please take him home. That's all. Send that cat home, too. I won't have a cat around the place. I'd rather have smallpox. You may have both. You'll have to have William Adolphus. He is under quarantine as well. I'll have to put up with that dog of yours. You will have to endure William Adolphus. I ain't curious, but would you kindly tell me why the doctor called you Peter? Because it's my name, I suppose. Isn't that rather peculiar name for a woman? It is. I ain't curious, but would you mind telling me how in tarnation you came to be called Peter? If I had been a boy, my parents intend to call me Peter, in honor of a rich uncle. When I, fortunately, turned out to be a girl, mother insisted that I should be called Angelina. They gave me both names, but as soon as I grew old enough, I decided to be called Peter. It's bad enough, but not so bad as Angelina. Just then, the door opened, and in came the dog. Oh, Mr. Riley, see what you've let me in for? But Mr. Riley paid no attention to Alexander Abraham. He had caught sight of William Adolphus. William Adolphus arched his back, flattened his ears, and made a flying leap back squarely on Mr. Riley's back, turning it, turning, caterwauling. You never saw a more astonished dog than Mr. Riley. With a yell of terror, he bolted out of the kitchen, into the hall, through the hall, and into the kitchen round again, with each choking, and faster, and faster, and faster! Woman! Call off that infernal cat before he kills the dog! There was never any more trouble with Mr. Riley after that. Now, I'm going to clean up this mess. You best take yourself to the sitting room, Mr. Bennett, so to speak, out of the way. I won't have my house meddled with. If you don't like it, you can leave it. If I could, I shouldn't be here for a minute. I can tolerate men and dogs when I'm compelled to, but I cannot and will not tolerate dirt and disorder. It took me the better part of a week to get that house in order, but I did thoroughly. I am noted for doing things thoroughly. When Alexander Abraham wouldn't talk, I let him alone. And when he did, I said just as sarcastic things as he did, only I said them smiling and pleasant. I could see he had a wholesome awe of me. But every now and then, he seemed to forget his disposition and talk like a human being. Alexander Abraham was an intelligent man, though he had got terribly warped. Neither Alexander Abraham nor I worried much about the smallpox. We didn't think he would take it. But the very next morning, Miss McPherson, what are the symptoms of smallpox? I didn't feel as scared as I should have expected. After enduring a woman hater, a dog, and the early disorder of that house, and coming out the best with all three, smallpox seemed rather insignificant. It is impossible to pronounce on the disease yet, but of course, there is every likelihood that it is. All the nurses in town who will take smallpox cases are overly busy right now. I don't know what you'll do. I will nurse Mr. Bennett. It is my duty, and I never shirk my duty. I am noted for that. He is a man, and he keeps a vile dog, and he has smallpox, but I won't see him die for lack of care for all that. I nursed Mr. Bennett through the smallpox, and I didn't mind it much. He was much more able sick than well. Below stairs, I reigned supreme, and Mr. Riley and William Adolphus lay down together like a lion and a lamb. Once, seeing him look lonely, I patted him on the head. He looked up at me with an expression in his eyes, which cured me of wondering why Alexander Abraham was so fond of him. When Alexander Abraham stood up, he began to make up for the time he lost at being pleasant. Anything more sarcastic than that man and his comments as you couldn't imagine. I just laughed at him, having found that could be depended on to irritate him. What vexed him most was that Mr. Riley took to following me about and wagging what he had of a tail at me. It isn't enough that you should come into my peaceful home and turn it upside down, but you had to alienate the affections of my dog as well. He'll grow fond of you once I leave. Dogs are like that. William Adolphus has never swerved from his alliance to me, though you do give him cream on the side. He hadn't thought I'd known that. In another week, the doctor came and released us. Goodbye, Mr. Bennett. I have no doubt you're glad to be rid of me, but no gladder than I am to go. I was glad to be back home, of course, but it did seem lonesome. William Adolphus roamed about forlornly and appeared to feel like an exile. The sight of a bone made me think of Mr. Riley. My Sunday school class had been given to another woman, and altogether, I didn't feel as if I belonged anywhere. I had existed like this for a fortnight when Alexander Abraham appeared, though at first sight, I didn't recognize him. He was so spruced and barbered up. Will you believe it? William Adolphus, my own William Adolphus, rubbed up against that man's leg with an undisguised purr of satisfaction. I had to come. I couldn't stand any longer, Angelina. My name is Peter. No, it isn't. Angelina for me, and always will be. Angelina just suits you exactly. And Angelina Bennett will suit you still better. You must come back. Mr. Riley's moping for you, and I can't get along without you. How soon can you be ready to marry me? Because If you won't, I wish you'd let me die of smallpox. Do, dear Angelina. To think that a man should dare call me his dear Angelina. And to think that I shouldn't mind.